I am Richard S. McGee. Thank you for joining us for the second segment of Black History Month. We hope you enjoy and will listen in on other programs that we are airing and viewing on this channel.
America is essentially a dream. It is a dream of a land where men of all races, of all nationalities, and of all creeds can live together as brothers. The substance of the dream is expressed in these profound words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Dr. Martin Luther King and his era. Who can tell me when he was born?
1939. I hope I've got it right.
1939.
He was 39 when
I
he
think
died.
he was earlier than that.
1963.
I think it was 33 or 34.
37, I think.
37?
I think I might not be right. No.
Wow.
So he's
Anyway, he was the son of a Baptist minister in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Became a minister. Went to Boston University, got a PhD in religion. Went back south and got immersed in what was supposed to be a very short duration protest. Let's talk about Martin.
That was Montgomery, wasn't it? It was
What?
Montgomery.
The Montgomery boycott was supposed to be
the Montgomery
a few
Improvement
weeks.
Association.
Okay, talk about it. Yeah, he went back to the Montgomery, and what happened there?
Well, it was the whole Montgomery bus boycott, which, you know, a lot of things were going on in Montgomery. Was Montgomery
No,
also...
you're talking Rosa Parks now.
right.
Was
Not that
Montgomery...
before Rosa. No,
Was the...
the bus boycott was Rosa Parks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go now. You can come in here because you started out. There was a 15-year-old woman.
Oh, right, with Claudette Colvin.
Yeah, who
Yes.
was. Rosa was not the first to be asked to move to the back of the bus.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
That's what we just said.
She started telling the story.
Yeah.
Now the question.
It's know your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question arose as to why she didn't get her name was Claudette Colvin. And the question arose as why she didn't get the big limelight. And the reason she didn't get the big limelight is because the NAACP was running the show. Rosa Parks was a secretary for the NAACP and a middle income person, and they thought it would give it more oomph if you're someone who was straight and and carrying on in the right way if they used her as the image, whereas a teenager may not garner that kind of interest and support. So that's why she never got pushed forward.
And she was pregnant. She was 15 years old and pregnant.
Yeah.
And so that would not have been a good image either.
Oh well, that's true there too, but they didn't mention that.
Yeah,
that
she
was never
pregnant.
mentioned. Yeah.
She was pregnant,
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's go from there. All right. Where are we from the bus thing? All the marchers, all the dogs and water.
You know, it's so easy to look back on this and to see how it happened and say, oh, that wasn't so bad. But you know, when Dr. King was leading this, I think it was, nobody had ever done it before. Nobody had ever done, not even Gandhi, who King looked to, I think.
Right, he did.
But
Well, he did borrow
but
the non-violent movement
right,
from Gandhi, yes.
But in terms of the strategies he had to try to employ, and he apparently trusted in a higher power, I guess.
He totally did.
And it really made a difference. I was thinking, I don't remember exactly where this fits, but didn't he also participate in or come down to support the
garbage workers.
The garbage truck
course, the
drivers, the
union.
DPW
The garbage
workers.
workers, yeah.
And where was that? Was that in Birmingham?
That
Or
was
in
in,
Montgomery, or where was that? Or that was Chicago? Maybe it was in
No, no,
Because
no.
he did stuff
It was
in
like
Chicago
Memphis.
too.
It was somewhere in the South.
Well, I mean, obviously, when he was assassinated, he was in Memphis in
Memphis.
support of the
garbage workers.
the union down there, and they were striking. And I think there was some pretty stark differences
Yeah.
between the black workers who were part of the garbage team, so to speak, and the whites. And I think that he was trying to get all about equality,
Yes.
for these workers, and we were really kind of getting the short shrift. And that was, I think, they kind of brought him out. They wanted him to be a part of the rally. They had a major rally. He was a speaker, and really kind of obviously electrified the audience and the crowd and all of that, and really trying to make a difference in that fight, in that union's fight for to be properly recognized. But in terms of historically where he had been, had he been involved with some other worker groups prior to that, I don't exactly know. Maybe you
But
guys.
that was where he was headed. I think that his last speech he gave, his 45-minute speech, really was talking about economics.
Yes.
And really the power that black people could have with their money.
Yeah.
And have a larger voice collectively.
Yes, but he ran into a lot of trouble when he changed his course. A lot of people felt that he was abandoning the normal course of just getting things differently for people socially. And when he began to talk about specific things like economics, there was a lot of fear that maybe he was selling out and he was going in a different direction with the whole program. So there was a lot of discussion about it among his people. But he did, and he carried on, and he won a Nobel Prize as a Peace Prize. You remember what year that was he won the Nobel Peace Prize?
64?
That's
I
what
was
I was
thinking
gonna guess,
64.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
You got it?
We're not sure. We
right.
want
I
want
was gonna say
confirmation from you.
64.
What?
We were thinking 64.
Okay, if you say so. I don't have it. It's in my
Oh.
book.
Oh, you did. Oh.
It's in the book.
No, you can't do the book.
No, but there were a lot of interesting aspects to the whole movement. How long did that movement last? You have an idea? From the beginning of the first march to the very end. Well, of course, it died when he died. Or at least it didn't die, but it was not the same. Didn't have the same vigor.
Some of us would like to think that
That
it's
it's still
Still
happening.
going on.
That it
Yeah.
never died.
It never
Absolutely.
died.
No.
And I marched and marched and marched to make his birthday a national holiday.
yeah.
And I went to Washington, D.C., and I marched for years. And
What year was that?
I came together with a team who made the posters and did everything with Stevie Wonder. And
Wow.
this was in the 80s
Yeah.
when we were marching to make it a holiday.
Right. Was that during Ronald Reagan?
You remember when it
became
a holiday?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan signed it into
You
law.
remember what year?
The 80s, I don't think you know specific.
well,
year, right?
some states didn't
Reagan.
adopt it.
There's
New
only one
Hampshire,
state that still doesn't.
It's still done.
Arizona.
Well, they
Arizona,
changed it
right.
because they
What
wanted to
state
get
is
this-
that?
They had to change it.
Arizona, I thought.
Arizona.
They,
Oh,
I
I
thought
thought
they
it was New
changed it to
Hampshire.
get this Super
New
Bowl.
Hampshire did turn. New Hampshire
Oh.
eventually came into line,
Oh.
but Arizona, I'm not sure. if they
Okay.
No, I
did.
don't think they did.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I still don't think it's a holiday.
No?
I think it's important to bring up about Black Wall Street.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of people don't know, I know I did not know, about I want to say an entire town, city, with banks and schools and theaters and hospitals, and the entire town was created for
Where is this
and
again?
by black people in
Tulsa.
Oklahoma.
Tulsa.
What's the
Oklahoma?
name of the town?
Tulsa.
Tulsa,
Well,
Oklahoma.
it was called Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
The whole
basically,
town?
yes, it was
Yeah.
all
Black Wall Street.
Black
Yeah.
Wall Street.
Okay.
And it was all black people,
Yeah.
run by black people, managed by
Yeah.
black people, run everything. The
Is it still in
schools,
existence?
the KKK blew it up.
They
Burned it-
they
burned
burned
it
it
to the
down,
ground.
and they killed more than 100 people.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
literally the
1924,
worst
I think it
terrorist
was.
act in this
Ev-
country.
Yeah.
What
And-
what period was that?
1924, I think, is
Yeah.
when the riots
24.
were.
And the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, started December 24th, 1865.
Oh my God.
Now, how's that food for thought?
Exactly.
1865.
You,
Okay. All right.
freed a slave, and we've got.
And
We'll
we
take
got
care of that
something
for
for
you.
you.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And they're still going.
And
That's
today, David Duke endorsed a candidate for president.
That's right.
And the Ku Klux Klan has been complaining that they were not given permission to clean up the trash along a highway. Did you notice that? They wanted to, you know, these signs that say this part of it,
Yes.
they wanted to say this by such and such Klan
By
chapter.
this, yeah.
Oh my God.
And they couldn't do it, and they were pissed.
Oh God.
Yeah.
What progress have we seen since the King era began in this country? What progress of note have we seen?
Well,
we can
number
start
one, we
out.
have
We
an
can
African
start out
American
by.
president.
We can start out. Yeah, that's
It's
where
the
we can
biggest.
begin and move backwards into that. Yes. We have a black president. Unfortunately, and not because he's black, but because he's not accepted, we still have a lot of racial polarization. Perhaps it's no longer. It is now blatant.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, when people say from day one that you take office, Mr. Black President, we aren't going to work with you at all. And it just went downhill from there.
Sure. You got the Tea Party came shortly
Yeah.
after he went into
Yeah.
office, right?
But despite that, he still accomplished so many things. Despite that.
I was very moved when the state of South Carolina, in response to that massacre of people in the
Yes.
black church,
Yes.
took down the
flag.
Confederate flag. I thought I would never see. I didn't think I'd live to see the day that
Yeah.
one of those states would take that down. And I think that's a real step ahead.
That's
because
monumental.
I agree.
It is.
Well,
that's one
I
thing.
think it was during his period, or maybe just before, that Thurgood Marshall was appointed as the first black Supreme Court justice.
And he wrote some fantastic opinions too.
Yeah.
Yes,
wrote
he
a
was
lot of
the
really great
general counsel for the NAACP
Yeah.
Legal Defense Fund,
Yeah.
and he carried us
Very smart.
into a lot of those bills that went
Yeah.
went before Congress. And he helped write them and he had defend them
Yeah.
all. And he was very,
Helped end
very, very,
segregation.
very articulate. And he was replaced by Clarence Thomas. You're on TV there.
It's, yeah.
I
It's
can't
funny you say
mention
that.
those.
I was thinking that we no longer had an African American person on the Supreme Court, and then you remind me of that.
We don't.
Yes, yeah. Funny how it totally slipped my mind.
Well, that was the
We've got a
president
woman,
of
we've got a Latina, we got,
President
we got-
George Bush,
Yeah, good God.
Colin Powell, and Clarence Thomas in the same breath.
Yeah, well,
And there's a first. Colin Powell, Joint Chiefs of Staff of
That's
the
a first.
military.
Condoleezza Rice.
Condoleezza,
Don't
that's a
forget
first.
Condi.
That was a good one. That was George
Yeah.
Bush's appointment also.
Yeah, very good.
Yes,
Very
he thought he had in Clarence Thomas a Colin Powell. And anyway, give me some more.
So we certainly can talk about, progress we made in education. I mean, we've got, a number of, and now here at Wellesley College, we now
We
have
have
the new president is an African American woman, and that's
Yeah.
that's obviously very, very monumental
Yeah.
and just really outstanding. And down at Brown University, we had a
Yes.
black female president there. So I
Yes.
mean, there's I think many examples, in not just Ivy League, but certainly including the Ivy League,
Yeah.
where
Exactly.
blacks have risen to the heights, the top, the president of these great institutions.
And I understand that we have at least 6,000 to 7,000 black female entrepreneurs,
Wow.
Yeah.
which is a new thing in this period of time. There are a whole bunch of other things. I'm sure that you can think of them. Give me
Yeah.
a few more.
Well, I was thinking about. I think racism is still distinctly with us, but I think it
Yeah.
has changed. It has changed. One thing that maybe not as well known, but it is, to me at least, a signal of a shift, that has come in some recent court decisions in the cases that I deal with, where the courts, somewhat surprisingly, have actually recognized unconscious bias. That is, one of the problems of civil rights enforcement is that it's an intentional violation. You have to prove that somebody deliberately wanted to do it. But these court decisions, one of which was from the First Circuit called Thomas versus Kodak, in that case, the court for the first time, I think, or one of the first times, says, all right, if you can show that there's disparate treatment, you don't have to, we'll accept that it's unconscious and that people do not admit and don't realize the degree to which they're letting their subconscious racial feelings affect what they do. But we're still not going to, it's still illegal, we're still not going to tolerate it. But just because it's unconscious, we're not going to, that doesn't give you a pass.
Right.
But and to my mind, I mean, I like to mention when I was in college, I was interested in this subject and basically how people change their minds about things like this. And one of my professors said he was looking forward to the day when black people would become neurotic instead of psychotic.
Yeah.
Because he said, if pardon my saying so, Jewish people tend to be neurotic because they can't tell, usually, if they're being discriminated against because of being Jewish. But most African Americans, if they're discriminated against, they know why, and that's why they're not getting neurotic. But I sort of think that we're moving a little more in that direction because I think there is a lot less tolerance of overt discrimination, overt anti-African American statements. I mean, I got to tell you, I look at TV, I don't look at it very much, but when I see it, I see many more models of different races, African Americans as well as Hispanics and many other Asians and many others. And it seems as though, at least at a superficial level, things are getting a little better looking.
Well, and again, I think it's important not to, we have to look at racism in a total picture, that we have to understand the intersectionality, but also institutional racism, sort of taking that away from sort of the interpersonal racism that you're talking about in terms of how we act and react together and with implicit bias and conscious bias. Yes, I mean, we can talk about that, how we're getting along with each other, but we have to understand that the system of racism is there. So as much as we want to be able to work together, the system is still set up white-centered and for white people, white-directed, white-created for white people. So as long as the system is set up in a white supremacy culture, then racism will always exist. And so, as much as, again, that we can have, these sort of, cross-racial and interracial friendships and relationships, but we have to look at systems. And I think that, those kind of conversations, I think, are more productive to have, especially engaging white people into the conversation, because then it's not about what I said or how I impacted or what I might think as a white person or what I might feel or the implicit biases I have, but let's look at the systems, that are in place that are affecting all people. And so whether it's, women or people of color, LGBT and obviously disabled. So, I mean, I think that we have to engage the conversation, not just looking at racism as an interpersonal problem, but it really is a systemic problem that we need to look at. And, I look at Black history, as so inspirational when I see the history of Black people and just the strength, the power, the strength, it blows me away to think about really what conditions and situations and how people grew up and the fear, but they persevered anyway. And those stories are, regardless of who you are, if you're a human, okay, you can empathize with these stories. I mean, I just, the stories are so rich, and as much as we hear about these leaders and people that have truly made a difference, there's so many people that were truly instrumental, you know, in really the pushing forward of all of humanity. But these individual stories, you know, are just inspiring, you know, no matter how you identify or whether you identify racially, you know. So I think that, you know, Black history, yes, it's wonderful to learn about, you know, the wonderful people, but also just to think about the strength and the perseverance, and really the backs and the shoulders that the people, and that we came on, and who, you know, when I think about, you know, what, you know, my own family, you know, with my husband and his family and my children, my own children, as much as, you know, it pains me to see how racism still exists and how, but, you know, 50 years ago, Black people were hanging from trees. You know, now granted, what's happening now in a lot of the Black community with law enforcement and so forth is obviously just as problematic. I don't really go by a week without having Tamir Rice's face in my mind when I see that young 12-year-old boy who looks like my son. You know, so those are the things as important as knowing the history. Yes, we need to know the history so you don't repeat the history, but we're repeating the history. So we need to truly understand
how do we open
that.
those minds up? How we can get people in, we can talk about the subject, and we can agree or we can disagree, and we leave, and it just becomes academic. How do we get people to buy in to the subject, buy in a way that is valuable and meaningful, incorporated into their lives? How do we do that?
Well, I think that part of what I have done in my racial justice education as a white person is try to engage white people specifically in terms of realizing that this affects you, okay? Because this is the thing, is that for some reason, white people think that racism does not affect them. And so that is really...
Well, it doesn't if they don't come in contact with the instances where race becomes an issue.
disagree. I disagree with that, because the way that I look at it as a white person is if all of humanity, okay, if all of humanity is not given the opportunity to reach their human potential, I lose, okay? Because it is not a world that I want to live in, or I think a world that we should live in, where only a few succeed, where only a few get to be what they want to be. And so, you know, I remember, you know, a business owner, a white business owner said to me, Michelle, why should I care about this? And I said, you know what? Your wife has cancer, right?
That's the prevailing attitude, though.
Well, it is. And so he said, you know, I said to him, your wife has cancer. And he says, yes, she does. And I said, what if there is a person of color, okay, out there, that if it was given the same opportunities you were given, in terms of the schooling you were given, maybe the GI Bill that your father got, or the free education that you might have got, or the scholarships you got, or where you got to live, maybe they would have been able to already have found a cure. But as long as we keep people back, thinking that somehow we need to have it first, or we need to have more, and not worry about what we're not given, we're losing. And we have to understand that. We have to understand that the systems in place for people, for white people, you know, who would run a business like that? Who would run a business if you're trying to be successful, but you're only going to allow some people to succeed?
Happens.
I understand, but it's wrong. And I think that if you can lay out a business case, and I try to do that, I've written an essay called How White Privilege Hurts White People. And I have written out 25 different ways. And I'm speaking as a white person, okay, who has lived as a white person my entire life. And I realize how my whiteness has literally hurt me, okay, and hurt me in my relationships, being able to connect to people of color, to be able to understand my own identity. You know what, I mean, I look at myself, you know, as people ask me, what are you? Okay, my ancestors were Italian and Portuguese and Irish. I know nothing about those cultures. So my family at one point, when they came here from Portugal and Italy said, well, we're going to buy into this whiteness, and we're going to give up our language, and we're going to give up our culture. We're going to do some food. But my grandmother never passed down her recipes, her culture, her language. She never taught my mother Portuguese, although she spoke it with her mother. I heard it in the house growing up. But as white people, we give up that in order for this lure of whiteness. So that is just one thing that I think about as my identity, that I've given up for that, that I would change, totally. So there's so many things, and engaging more white people in the conversation from a perspective of really understanding how institutional racism holds the whole entire country back, and that if we literally want to live in a society that has justice for all, then you have to realize that is justice for all and not some. And you realize when you don't have justice for all, you don't have justice.
Right.
Okay?
Well, we're not going to have to worry about that much longer because the rich people are going to buy the country.
They already
have.
Yeah.
And Canada's not going to let us.
And they're going to tell you.
Right, they're going to build a wall.
That's right.
And they're going to tell you how it should go. This is the way the plan is.
Yeah.
But, my father, and I don't mean to take so much time, but, my dad, who's 74 years old, obviously grew up Irish Catholic, never had any experiences with people of color. Obviously, the first real person that he had a relationship with was with my husband 27 years ago. White people can change, okay? My father has
Isn't there a reciprocal to that, though?
What do you mean?
Don't you think there needs to be a little bit of change in black community as well?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But as a white person, I feel like my job,
What
role
would you
is to
advocate
work
would
with
be
white people.
what would you advocate would be the necessary change in the black community?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
I think the black community is more open to change than the white community is. It's just my impression. People, I mean, if I were black, I think I would.
Who told you that you weren't?
Well, maybe it's in my.
She's been professing all night long.
I know. Sorry.
But I just think black, maybe because of the differential of influence or whatever, but it just seems to me that the black community, the black people I know, are much more receptive to being multiracial than a lot of the white people I know, unfortunately.
But you're obviously talking about a certain class of black people. Black people who are.
That's another question.
Who are achievers, who have status in life, who can walk away from some of this stuff if they wish. Like Michael Price.
But one thing I will say, there's still a certain amount of mistrust, from the black, perspective, or black vantage point in terms of race relations. That these are people that have done your people wrong for years and forever. Historically have beaten you down and enslaved you and just treated you like dirt effectively. And many of them said it was in the name of God, in the name of it was ordained. Indeed. So people still harbor some feelings of that sort of that whole superiority sort of complex, and you certainly would feel that you a lot of times don't have high expectations for your interactions with a Caucasian person, meaning that if you come away with it and if it's a 50-50 proposition, I'll take that. I'm not expecting you to like me a lot, but if you don't hate me a lot, I'm okay. You know what I mean? Just don't hate me too much. You don't. I don't have huge expectations that you're gonna like me a lot. Even though I think I'm a pretty likable person.
You are.
But you know what I'm saying. It's sort of, I think there is a view out there that again, I'd be happy with just an even you know, sort of a neutral
And so
perspective on
why do you think that? What is it about specific white people, right? Because white people didn't create slavery. I mean, the white people alive now,
right.
They didn't. So what is it about, you know, if you can answer that? I mean, is there one thing that you...
I think you have the view that that people think that that somehow there's this whole profiling, so that that people are not expecting you to be as intelligent, as articulate, as capable, you know, in very broad terms, and certainly in specific areas that you don't have technical expertise, that you need to somehow demonstrate, you know, more perhaps than others, that, you know, I belong here, I can do this, I've done this, this is who I am. I'm this person who I profess to be, and you know, and somehow I need to show you, yeah. And so I think that is, certainly a perspective that I have, you know, that and arguably you need to prove yourself to any person, any new situation. But I think there is yeah, no doubt. I think that it would seem that a black person might be willing to give another black person more of the benefit of the doubt, so to speak, in terms of, I'm a college-educated person, I'm a person who lives in a certain community, I do whatever, and so no one needs to, you know, there's no more layers that need to be peeled back, perhaps by another black person, but in many cases there are some white people who would say, well, yeah, you did this, you did that, but what else have you done? You know, that says you belong in this club.
Yeah.
So that.
Well, and especially when you see statistics, you know, right now that talk about that employers would hire a white man with a conviction versus a black man without a conviction.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the statistics play out to the fears and to the mistrust for certain. But one of the things, and if it's okay, just what I see, and I'm generalizing, obviously, in terms of, you know, the black community, and obviously, you know, is the internalized racism, that not knowing history, okay, and not truly understanding how this country was formed and why this country was formed. You know, I recommend Race, the Power of an Illusion video to everyone, okay, regardless. Because I feel that that many black people, and again, generalizing, don't know the history of this country. First of all, they don't have a clear understanding of the biology of race. They don't understand that we're all one human family and that there truly is no difference.
Well, that's even more complicated now, because you have a lot of people who are coming into the country who have not had that opportunity to even address the question of what the country is all about.
Right.
But they come and they get seated.
Right.
And they begin to prosper, some in manners in which they do. But I just read an article the other day that the new diversity is white women.
Well, we benefit from diversity more than any group.
But the new diversity is white women.
Right. Well, white women have capitalized on it because, again, you have white men in power, and then if they're going to give up some of that power, they're going to give it up to their mothers. They're going to give it up to their sisters. They're going to give it up to their daughters.
Yeah.
So, yes, isn't that sort of makes sense?
I hear that.
Yeah.
I hear that. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that, but I think, how do we empower young black kids to realize that this is a system purposefully placed, that it's not about what you can do and what you can be, and to really either not learn that or unlearn that. I mean, that is one of the things that I try to educate my young mixed race boys, who probably will be looked at by many people as black. The white sort of gets cast out.
Well, I lost mine.
But I think to be able to hear, you know, again, you're in business, you're successful, you have the education. You know, what happens when you don't? You know, how do you continue to, you know, think that you can, you know, rise up and you know, get the education that you want, be able to be who you want to
It's
be.
a very complex and difficult world in which we live.
Yes, it is.
And the difficulty is that the people who could are afraid to, and those who could not won't. So
Yet.
those who can lead in the charge to bring about a civility and an environment in which we can all live together are afraid to do that because it's not popular and it's dangerous in many respects. It's socially castrating. You get too involved in trying to pull off the stunt of making things work with people. So who do you turn to anymore? I understand the high school has a new program. And this program is called Voices of America. And what they do is they only take about 27 students into the program. And it's run by the English department, not the history department. And what they do is they take issues and they break the 27 kids up into teams and they discuss the pros and cons of these issues. And all of the issues have to do with race relations, which is very interesting. And I did a program with them, and it was suggested to me by one of the mothers who was very impressed with her daughter, who had never had this kind of exposure, this kind of discussion. And I asked them, the Medco director and the English teacher run the program at Wellesley High School. And I asked, does he plan to expand it? And he began to talk about other things. So I'm not, even in a safe environment where he could make progress in this program, he's not yet really ready to commit to going deeper into it, including more people, getting more involved. And so I'm just waiting to see where they take the program. It's going to be very interesting. But this is a place where you start. This discussion starts here. And maybe it starts before high school, but most certainly it starts in high school. And perhaps in that respect, if we can get him and some other folks to expand their subject matter to include more people, we might see a little bit change in what goes on.
Oh, sure. The middle school is doing some great things.
Yeah, they are.
I'm presenting at the high school next week at Seminar Day, doing 3 seminars with kids talking about race. So there are opportunities, and there's some amazing people doing amazing things. I don't want you to think just because Martin Luther King died that
it stopped.
Yeah, no.
Didn't die for nothing.
There is, being in the racial justice field, there's amazing people doing amazing things in this country. There really is.
But we must have some more great stuff happening out there, and you folks are not helping me out here and discover some of these people for the people who are listening in on us. We want the people who are listening in to understand these great names and the great things that they did.
Serena Williams.
Particularly,
That's right. Bree Newsom, who took down the flag. Bree Newsom, who took down the flags, right? Who took down the Confederate flag in South Carolina. She went up on top of the flagpole and took it down.
Okay, all right.
We have the 3 women that started the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah. They've gone negative, though, so I don't know about them.
Well, they haven't really gone negative.
No.
The media has, and
the media has portrayed them as going negative. All right.
I mean, the Black Panthers
That's the same as
are
going
amazing.
negative. As far as the American public is concerned, that's going negative.
No.
If the media says it, so it's happening.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
But it's a good movement.
Yeah.
It's a good movement. I don't know how far they're going to go with it.
And it's been misunderstood because it's been misdefined. Because it really started from a woman writing a very sincere letter after the
Trayvon Martin.
After the Trayvon Martin verdict. And saying in her letter, "Our lives matter, Black Lives Matter." And her friend responded with the hashtag Black Lives Matter. And that's how it simply started. It was just, it was out of sadness that this child was killed and nobody was held accountable.
No.
Was it the Black Lives Matter that just invaded Hillary's party and paid $500 to take their
Well, see, it's not
sign
a,
in?
it's not a centralized organization.
Oh.
It has, you know, with a formal hierarchy. It has groups have formed across the country as, you know, police shootings and more things happen. Groups go to protest and in the name of Black Lives Matter. But some of these areas and groups are more forceful than others and a little more aggressive.
But it was a student. It was a student that went into Hillary's conversation the other day and was asking her to apologize to Black people for calling them super predators. So she basically was asking Hillary Clinton to explain herself and some of the things that she had said back in the early 90s when the war on drugs and mass incarceration was happening. So this is a young student, you know, and I think that, you know, we have the right, First Amendment says that we have the right to speak. And again, whether it comes under Black Lives Matter, or whether it, you know, comes as a student, I think that in a democracy, that should be able to happen.
And it goes back to the quote I read earlier. It's through the lens that you're looking through. You know, to certain people, the Black Lives Matter is negative. And it doesn't matter how you explain it and define it and tell them what it really is. It's still going to be negative. And you're going to have politicians saying it's negative. And, but we have to make sure, as with Black history, we tell the correct history. We tell the truth. And so that's why these panels and discussions are important, to set the record straight.
I want to thank my panel for being here and spending 2 hours with me and providing some good discussion. And I hope that enough people look at this and take it within the spirit in which it's been sent to you or been devised for you. And with that, thank you for listening and watching The Learning Tree. I am Richard S. McGee, and good night.